Hello, everyone. Hello, 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 and welcome to Satsang. Another wonderful opportunity for us to gather together and talk about what I consider to be the most significant and important conversation going on the planet. It's just that's my feeling about it, and I'm absolutely sticking to it. I'm there we go. So I check myself out here, see what it looks like on the screen. I have to keep things set up correctly. Trying to be much better at my production than I have been. What I really need is somebody to volunteer to be my producer. That would be fantastic. Anyway, hello everybody, and welcome to Satsang. Let's see, live chat. I don't need any more of that. There's the chat. So, hello Eva from Poland. That's really wonderful. I have people here from Iran, from Israel, from India, all over the world, which really speaks directly to what I think the most important thing about this is, and that is that this discussion of spirituality is universal. It's not sectarian. It's not a religious group. It's not a particular organization. It's not a philosophy. It's not a religious theology. It's not a dogma. It's inquiry. Spirituality is inquiry, nothing more. Anybody who presents spirituality as a belief system is way off the mark, way off the mark. And I think it's really important for us all to grasp that. I'm asked a lot to give advice about things, to make recommendation for people's lives, and for the most part, I don't. It's very rare when I do that, and it's something really glaring, something it's clear to me that they're very stuck and they're not going to actually have the kind of life and experience they want to have unless they get some specific guidance. But most of the time, if you notice, especially like on satsang, I just point in a direction. The ultimate need is for everybody to walk this path themselves. We need to develop the attitude, the curiosity of inquiry, so that we're truly looking deeply within ourselves for the answers. This is so critical because, any answer that comes from the outside is going to be temporary. It's going to be somebody else's perspective, somebody else's view. There's there's only one person in the universe that can actually know you and know who you are, and that's you. Nobody else can. While we can do it together, we can do it in satsang, we can do it in sanghas, we can do it in group meditation, and I highly recommend all of those. Ultimately, the discovery of our true nature is a completely individual thing. It's kind of like death, right? Nobody goes in together, right? Nobody goes into death on a tandem bike. Everybody enters in to many, many aspects of our lives all by ourselves. And this kind of inquiry, the deep kind of inquiry that asks, who am I really, is something that has to be engaged in by yourself, in the solitude of your own being. Being willing to witness the quality and character and tendencies of our own thoughts, our own emotions. Being able to be present with the sensations in our body without reaction. To truly be willing to be present with the sum total of our experience. And the sum total of our experience is nothing but thought, emotion, and sensation. Think about that. It's deeply significant. Because we see this infinite range of experience, right? Infinite diversity. I mean, it's truly miraculous. the amount of diversity in a single moment. I mean, look around the room, the diversity of colors and sounds and textures and qualities. That's just in your room. And yet, all of those boil down to simply thoughts, emotions, and sensations. The very nature of experience itself are those three attributes. And they're actually different flavors, different qualities of the same essential vibration. They're different frequencies of the same vibration. So everything is a variation on a specific theme, and that specific theme is your being. Evo says, hi from Poland. Hello, Patang. Hello to all from Israel. Sarah Sands, hi from France. Hello, Sarah. Wonderful to have you. Starlight Glimmer. Hello, GP. Hello, Starlight. Walt says hello. Marlene Schrader from Texas says hi. Ivalo from Bulgaria. Wonderful. Starlight has a question right off the bat, so I'll get right into it. I'm going to need these glasses. And somebody said, GP, I didn't know your wardrobe contained white shirts. It's actually kind of a gray. It probably looks white against the background here and against with the lights. I actually do have two white shirts, but I don't wear them I don't wear most of the time. It's t-shirts and sweaters and the like. Anyway, Starlight says, does knowing yourself directly make the world a better place, or are the direct actions we have to take? Where does evil come from, and how can we stop it? Well, I see we're going to jump right into the little questions to get started. The cause of all of the suffering in the world, including all of the evil that we perceived, is ignorance of our true nature. So yes, knowing yourself makes a better world. When you know who you are, there's no greed, there's no avarice, there's no grabbing, there's no pushing away. There's an equilibrium, an equanimity with all things, because you are no longer grasping to find out what you are. The ego needs to grab. The ego, because it is so insubstantial and not actually who you are, and nothing but a thought, a collection of thoughts, really, it's constantly needing reinforcement. It's constantly needing to get something. It's constantly needing to acquire something in order to feel substantial. And that is the evil in the world. The evil is simply a love that has become so narrow that it's only about me or my immediate family, my immediate group, or my immediate community. It is just simply constricted, constrained. And therefore, self-protection arises in that kind of environment. When I believe myself to be a separate self, I immediately, the moment that happens, what arises within someone is the fear of death and the fear of lack. And our entire lives, from that point on, as long as that belief is in place, will be an attempt to compensate, to avoid death, and to grab everything I possibly can to avoid lack. That is the source of all evil, what we call evil. Evil is simply is nothing more than selfishness that is so self-concerned that the needs or concerns of others don't matter. And that's what we see. That's what greed is. That's what the avarice we see in the world is. The hoarding of wealth, the destruction of the earth. It is all simply greed. And greed has at its root fear of death and the fear of lack. See, see the mentality of poverty and the mentality of greed has the same essence. It has the same source. People who are very proud of their successes and they've acquired a lot and they've gotten a lot of stuff. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. But they too are trying to compensate. Some people compensate better than others, so they're more successful. They acquire more stuff. Some are less so. But the essence of it is identical. There's no difference. This is the nature of the egoic mind, which is nothing other than the false sense of self, the sense of being separate. So that sense of being separate needs to be looked at. It needs to be scrutinized. It needs to be inquired into, because we just assume it to be true. Now, if you're a physicist, the idea of separation is completely foreign. As physicists, they know there's no separation. There's a constant exchange of energy between every object. It's constantly going on. You may have more density of a particular frequency of energy over here than over there. And to our minds, we perceive that as two separate entities. But in fact, it's not. It's one single functioning whole. And I don't want you to take that, because we all love the idea of experiencing oneness. We want to know the oneness. We believe it to be possible and to be real. And it is. I just don't want you to take it as an intellectual idea or as a concept or as a philosophy. Ah, yes, we're all one. It needs to be seen directly. And the way you do that isn't through simply, excuse me, holding the idea that we're all one. It means digging in to that underlying unconscious belief that we're not. Really putting it under the microscope of inquiry. Is it really true? Or is it a thought, a belief system, a belief pattern that I have accepted as true? And not only me, it's been accepted by my tribe, by my community, by my culture at large. And in fact, if you look at it, it's the whole world of humans. Animals have no sense of that, by the way. They do not see separation. It is a completely mental construct. Animals do not have that sense of a me and a you. There is just a sense of undifferentiated consciousness. There's a sense of experiencing, which we all share. If it was universally true, if it was the truth, everything on the planet would sense that. But they don't. Separation exists only as a concept in our minds. It is the essential ignorance. It is the ignorance that befalls all of us, that in a sense has to befall all of us. Why? Because it is only through becoming immersed in that sense of a separate self, that essential ignorance, it is only by that happening that we wake up consciously to the reality of oneness. This is the gift of being a human. No other critter on the planet can do this. No, consciousness, appearing as a human, has the capacity for self-examination, self-contemplation, self-awareness. This is the big human gift. This is the true value of the human being. We can look at all the stupid things we've done, and they're legion, the stupid things we've done. All the stupid things have grown out of our lack of scrutiny, our lack of inquiry, our just acceptance of this fundamental ignorance as a truth and basing our entire lives around it. So I know I seem to be getting off the point, but I think evil, greed, all of the brutality, barbarism, all of the stuff that the world is experiencing right now, self-destructiveness, complete disregard for the environment, for each other, for just the natural value and rights of human beings, all spring from the sense of being a separate self. Without that, none of it can stand. Now, you don't have to convince the entire world of that. You only have to come to see it for yourself. When you see it for yourself, the end of that separation, remember, that sense of separation gave rise to the fear of death and the fear of lack, which means the end of that sense of separation eradicates the fear of death and the fear of lack. In other words, fear. And when there is no fear, you are living without the walls of the mind. You are living outside of a conceptual framework. You are living outside of intellect. You are living in the heart. You are living in the truth. And yes, you'll see greed other places, but it won't have the impact on you that it does anymore. And your very energy, your spirit, will be communicating constantly. It will be broadcasting in all directions the reality of the unity, of the oneness of all beings. I urge you to ponder this deeply, to consider it, to go more deep than just, yes, I get it, that's really nice. Because I hear it all the time, I get it intellectually, G. Well, good. It's a great place to start, but now go further. Don't stop until it completely immerses you in it and dissolves everything contrary to it. And it becomes as obvious to you as 2 + 2 = 4. Even if nobody else in the rest of the world, everybody else believes 2 + 2 = 3.5. You know better. You know what the truth is. And out of that arises the most enormous compassion, patience, long-suffering, tenderness, willing to endure. This is the true path. This is the path we're really on. And that doesn't mean there's one way of getting to it. There isn't. There's not, that one path doesn't mean one way, this particular thoughts, these beliefs, it doesn't mean that. The one path simply means what's the most direct way out of the illusion of a separate self and into the reality of my true being. For me, the reason I teach it like this is direct inquiry. It's just looking at it, examining it, going to the one place in our lives that is always there, can't not be there, and that is our own sense of being. It's simple, it's humble, it's motionless. You can't conceive of it. You can just know it. And to me, that is the path. That is the path to take. It's the path inward. It's not a path to something. Path to something implies you've got some place to go. The path inward implies there's no place to go. That it is a discovery of what is true. It is not the acquiring of truth. It is not the acquiring of some esoteric knowledge. It's not the acquiring even of enlightenment. It is simply the realization of what has always been the case. And that's where the entire structure of human thought just collapses and then begins to reorganize itself on a higher level. I'm going to take a vote on what of all my glasses, which ones you guys like the most. So I hope that answers it for you, Starlight. Johanna says hi from Mexico. Oh, that was Aaron who's asked about the white shirts. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I don't wear them very often. David and Elaine, hello folks. Greetings from a wet and cold UK. It's wet and cold here in Seattle as well. Good to see you, David, and good to see you guys too. Vess, hello from Norway. Digging the background, GP. Oh, you like this? I'm trying out new backgrounds. This is actually a piece of vinyl. So, I poke on it. You can actually see that. I'm just trying out backgrounds to make it, a nice place to sit, because I'm actually sitting in my office/studio. Ishta says, hello from Louisiana and ready for another heaping spoonful of satsang with Mr. G. Very good. Very good. Just a spoonful of satsang makes the medicine go down. Waltz, I understand the spiritual path to a certain extent, but I find it hard to apply it to everyday situations. How does one balance between the two? Well, the way to always find balance is to find the center, right? The center point. The center point in a balance doesn't move. You have to find that which is not moving, that which is the same. Whether I'm sitting in deep in meditation, even in the right posture, and with just clarity and a quiet mind, or if I'm in the middle of a meeting at work, or I'm in the middle of a presentation, or it's traffic. Find the center point. Find the still point. Find the place that is the same in both of those. Remember, the fulcrum that makes the balance happen, or makes the flow happen, right? Balance implies nothing's happening, right? We don't want balance, we want flow. But the fulcrum upon which the flow is taking place never moves. The hub of a wheel, the wheel can be spinning really fast, hundreds of miles an hour, but the hub isn't moving. It's absolutely still. It goes around it. Find that point. Now I'll tell you where to look. The point is always that which is aware of what is happening. When you're meditating, yes, it's quieter, right? Because your attention is focused inward, but you're aware of thoughts and sensations and emotions. The things are coming and going. If you've learned meditation from me, you realize that the object is not to stop sensations, emotions, and thoughts from flowing, but to simply witness them, to become aware of being aware. And that awareness in which all the rest of it is happening is in fact unmoving. That's the fulcrum. That's the hub. Now that awareness in meditation, yes, thoughts are going, no big deal. Emotions are going, no big deal. Sensations, no big deal. I'm aware of all of those. Now, it's exactly the same in our everyday life, in the most crowded subway, or on the bus, on the train, in the middle of a conversation with your spouse or your lover, at work, in the middle of a presentation. Is there any difference? Is it not still nothing but the flow of thoughts, emotions, and sensations, right? The only difference is the mind has said there's a difference. Mind said, well, now how do I maintain the balance between the two of them? Because there's the assumption, the belief underneath there is there's something different about that. It's not different. It's just a different quality of experience. But the experiencing is the same. The consciousness that is aware of quiet thoughts, maybe even a silent mind, is aware even of a silent mind, is the same consciousness that it's aware of a mind that's really busy and active. And of course, we can't sit. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. You can't sit like that all day long. We have to do stuff. We're out. We're not. Even if you are in a monastery and you were sitting like that for 12 hours a day, you still got to make food and clean the floors and do all this stuff to maintain the household of the monastery. So nobody's in this place where they're like that all the time. So instead, we become increasingly aware of the still point, the point from which all the rest is being seen. And from there, whether it be an enormous flurry of activity or it be utter silence, it is the same conscious awareness that is aware of both, or either, or the fluctuation of it. It's aware even of the belief that says, how do I maintain this while I'm in the everyday life? How do I maintain the balance? It's just a thought. You can't. You are the balance point. You don't need to maintain what you are. We have to try to maintain things that we're not, but you don't have to maintain what you are. So come back to that and notice there is no there is no essential difference between any thoughts, any feelings, or any sensations. Different quality of them, right? Some are more intense, some are less intense, some are pleasurable, some are painful, right? But their essence is identical. We have in our minds decided that somehow to be spiritually awake or in a meditation means that everything is very smooth and harmonious. No. And that is what keeps us stuck in the ping-ponging of going back and forth, because we think it's supposed to be different than it is. Are you not aware right now of the words that I am saying? That same awareness is aware, even if I was yelling, even if it was just utter cacophony, I was playing, metal music or something, right? You're headbanging. Same awareness, same consciousness. The consciousness that even goes into samadhi and has complete quiet for a time. Same consciousness. It is the consciousness itself is simply aware of whatever the content is, even if there is no content there. The consciousness is still there. That consciousness is the fulcrum. That's the balance point. I just noticed the paint on my arm. I've been painting my son's house. So it's right. I just don't sit here and do satsangs all day. Does that help? Does that help you, Walt? It's a very significant, important question, because it happens all the time. People mistake. They think that spiritual inquiry, meditation, or awakening is a special, rarefied state of consciousness. It can't be a state of consciousness because, as you can see, states always come and go. It's consciousness without a state. It is that which is aware of all states. When you grasp that, you are stepping. You have just dipped your toe into the ocean of awakening. And you've ceased to identify or put restrictions on yourself. You've ceased to make awakening an achievement. And instead, it's now becoming a recognition of that which is always here. Walt says, yes, it helps, GP. Thank you. You're very welcome. Very welcome. Robert Goldberg, listening from Southern Nevada. Oh, great. I don't know if you said that. Las Vegas. I'm going to be speaking at a conference in Las Vegas. I don't have the schedule of when I'm going to be speaking. It's a 3-day conference. I'll be there all 3 days with a booth and stuff like that. But I'm doing a 90-minute workshop there. I can get you, if you're on my mailing list, I'll be getting you some information about it. But it's called 5devents.com. Ugly website, by the way. And has nothing to do with it. But 5D, the number 5devents.com. It's really quite a large event with a lot of speakers and breakout groups and a lot of different booths and interesting products. It's called Quantum Consciousness of Science, Spirituality, and the like. I don't even know the name of it. But I'm going to be speaking on this, Yoga of Allowing, and really the expansion of consciousness. So if that's going to be the 19th, 20th, and 21st of April, which is like 2 weeks. Is that right? 2 weeks? Yeah, 2 weeks. So if any of you are in the Las Vegas area or want to come and stay, just by all means, I will be there. I'd love to meet some of you in person. I did a talk a couple weeks ago in Los Angeles, and I met some people that I've been conversing with for years that I actually finally met in person. A couple students of mine that were actually certified facilitators. Oh, it was delightful to actually get to meet some people in person and get to hang out with them for a little bit. So, so let's see. Eva says, about frequencies, it looks the brain together with mind work as a decoder of waves. ... Let's see if there's more down here that I can get to. So many things go through. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, what we're perceiving, everything we're perceiving. I mean, I think probably the best way to put it is that what we're experiencing are various frequencies of vibration, but there's nothing vibrating. Now, I know it's a total mind blower, right? But as of yet, science has not found a thing that is vibrating. It's kind of like the phenomena of light. Normally, waves, are an energy passing through a medium. Like sound is a wave passing through the air. Currents, are waves passing through the ocean. An earthquake is a wave passing through the land. Right? There's a lot of energy that's moving the land, but that's what it's doing. Light gives us some insight more into what consciousness is. It's always been a metaphor for consciousness, but life is perpetuates it. Light perpetuates itself, propagates itself is the word. It propagates itself. It's not passing through any medium. It's a wave that is not passing through a medium. It just propagates itself, and it never stops. It just keeps going. Unless something, grabs it, something gets in the way, something absorbs it, it just keeps going. I think this is a great metaphor for the nature of consciousness. We are experiencing consciousness vibrating, but consciousness is not a thing, a particle, or a wave that vibrates. So what we experience are various frequencies of a vibration of the same thing. Like, red light and violet light are at opposite ends of the visible spectrum of light, but they're both light. Red is no more or less light than is blue or violet. It's no less light than ultraviolet or infrared, which are outside what our eyes can actually see. All of the colors of light are light. And it's only because some frequencies are absorbed and other frequencies are reflected that we actually see the light. The word exist, to existence. We think of existence as being something existing objectively, right? There it is, as has a self and all that. But the actual meaning of the word exist derives from the Latin extare, I think it is extere, I believe, which simply means to stand out, to stand forth. Something can be there, but if there's enough of a shadow to outline it, something comes into existence. Its existence is not inherent. It is not self-generated. It has nothing has any objective existence. Everything that you experience is a momentarily something is kind of emerging from the background, being defined by a boundary. For light, that boundary is simply shadow, a difference in shade, color, and that's it. And that's it. I mean, you're seeing me against the background, right? Because your eye is simply distinguishing one frequency of light from another, and then you're mindful and, oh, this is GP, and he's sitting there talking. But the fact of the matter is that there's just something that is detecting something standing out from the environment. But if you actually looked at the screen on which you're viewing me, right, none of that's there. They're just little lights lighting up, going out, 60 times a second. So fast that it looks like there's actually an image there. And in fact, there's an image constantly appearing and disappearing. The nature of the vibrations that make up everything we experience is something, which is not even really a thing, coming into existence and going out of existence. And by existence, I simply mean standing out from the background, disappearing into the background. Standing out from the background, disappearing in the background. Somebody even measured it. I won a Nobel Prize for measuring the speed at which that is happening, and it's 100 trillion times a second. 100 trillion times a second. This thing is coming in and out of existence. And to give you some idea of how fast that is, 100 trillion, 100 trillion times a second is to a second what 1 second is to 3.2 million years. It is a rate so fast that from this level of perception, the state our human consciousness is in, it appears as if there are actually objects with consistent existence. In fact, there isn't. There never has been and there never will be. It is all an appearance. All of that is very useful to ponder. But it doesn't get to the whole picture if you see it simply in terms of the brain and the mind and functioning. We have to go deeper into it. Say, what is the actual nature of consciousness? How can consciousness vibrate? Well, I would ask, how can light propagate itself? We accept that. We go, yeah, that's what's happening. But we don't actually really ponder it deeply enough. And then I come along, or a teacher like me, and saying, all there is consciousness. There is no matter. There is no thing. There is no material structures. There is only consciousness. You go, well, how can that possibly be? There's a day that's coming, not too far in the future, where the idea of a material model of the universe will be relegated to the obsolescence. It'll be relegated to the history books of a very weird and unhappy time in human history. Consciousness is all there is. On a practical level, without even going into the physics or the quantum or any of that, look at your own life. Every moment of every day is conscious. That's all you ever experience. Yet we believe we're experiencing something out here, right? Background person, screen. We believe that, but what do you actually experience every single moment? Consciousness. The consciousness of what you are experiencing. The actual nature of what you are experiencing can only be determined once you know that it is consciousness that is experiencing it. When I talk about knowing who you are, that's what I'm referring to. Consciousness. And I just urge people to examine deeply the actual experience you're having and trust what you see, the insight you have of your experience, more than what you've been taught. People tell you, well, you're experiencing a body and a world, all these objective things. It's, there's also material structures. People tell you that. But that's not ever what you experience. All you ever experience is objects in consciousness. There's absolutely nothing in your experience that can tell you conclusively that what you're experiencing exists independently from your perception of it. As a matter of fact, the exact opposite is true. All I can ever validate is my own perceptions. How do I possibly conclude that these things exist outside of my perception? I cannot step outside of my perception and experience them. Therefore, the entire realm of my knowledge, my being, my existence is in the consciousness and my perceptions. That's where you put your attention. It's only from there that the truth can come, because everything else is a speculation. Everything else is an assumption. Everything else is just an idea made up, based on this underlying belief that does not stand up to scrutiny, that the universe exists independent of my consciousness of it. It's the basis of Western thinking. The basis of spiritual thinking is exactly the opposite. So, I think I just went off on a subject. Hopefully that was useful to you all. Julius, hi from AG from Sweden. Will there ever be a satsang on reincarnation? Sure. Just just ask the questions. I think I have gone into that subject before. Do you have something specific about it that you want to know? All right, let me take up a little bit of it, because for most people, the idea of reincarnation is, well, you kind of think of it either as like it's a do-over, right? Okay, I messed it up this time. Next time for sure. In some religious traditions, you gain merits so that you get better and better lifetimes, and eventually you're going to clear out all your samskaras and no awakening. For others, it's just a wonderful sense that there's a continuity to my existence. What is the actual nature of reincarnation? Well, before you can answer the question, what is the nature of reincarnation, let's take up the question of what is incarnation. Right? I got to do it. I got to start there before I'm doing it multiple times. Right? I think the real mistake is that we believe ourselves to be. We start out believing I am this body, and for all of us, that belief persists in one form or another. Even when we begin to see that, oh, I'm way more than the body. The sense of identity we all walk around with is the body. We think of ourselves in terms of our gender and our age and our upbringing and our race and our language and our memories and history and all of that kind of stuff. None of that is actually who you are. All of that has been acquired over time. It's come and it will go. When it goes, we call it death. And then when a new batch of that arises, we call it rebirth. We call it a reincarnation. I'm recommending that you don't incarnate at all, that you deeply scrutinize this assumption that you are your body. Are you this body? That's the question. If I am this body, then there is no reincarnation. If I am the body, then clearly this body is going to decay and die. It's not going to be able to support life anymore, and I'm going to disappear. That's the materialist's view, that it's just over. Phoomp, nothingness. The spiritual view is, no, it ain't over. Not because it's a soul in the body. That's kind of many people have that view. Which is something, a little sidebar here. I find that very, very confusing. On one hand, you'll have people that are not this body, but then they think they're going to have this body after they die. Going to go to heaven, and then they're going to get a better body. I mean, hopefully it's a young and handsome body, right? Felt and muscular and all that sort of stuff, right? But if the body dies and something persists, I want to know what that is that persists. Let's say we do have lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. Okay, all right. What is it that's going from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime to lifetime? Because clearly I don't remember past. I've had little glimpses of things that have taken place. Maybe they're true, maybe they're not. Right? I just have to assume that in all those other lifetimes, I was as convinced that this is who I am as I am in this lifetime. The ego wants to perpetuate itself. So the sense of personality, my sense of my individual characteristics, my proclivities, my tendencies, my gifts and talents, somehow I want those to continue, either through some kind of afterlife or some kind of a reincarnation. I think one thing is obviously true. We all have an innate sense, an intuitive sense, that there's more to it than just this. That when this body dissolves, something remains. What I always encourage is, what is that something that remains? That's the question I want you to ponder. Not what's my next life going to be, or what's my past life going to be. What was my past life? Those can be interesting, but from my perspective, not all that useful. I find in inner reconciliation, when I do work with people, sometimes a trauma that needs to be released in this lifetime has its origin in a past lifetime, in which case that gets revealed, it comes up, the trauma gets released, and it gets healed. But I never do past life regressions. I don't go there looking for it. I find that if the energy wants to reveal that, it does, because all I'm looking to do is alleviate suffering. But the deeper question, even beyond the alleviation of suffering, the deeper question is, what is it that remains? When this dissolves, what's left? Well, I think it's quite obvious what's left if you really look at it and you buy my consciousness only model. What's left is consciousness. And so the consciousness is consistent, lifetime to lifetime to lifetime. I can't imagine that in another lifetime I would be having an experience, but my sense of being conscious of having an experience wouldn't be any different. It would be exactly the same way it is now. The content's different, circumstances are different. Might not even be on this planet, right? But consciousness, the same. The real meaning of nirvana, of the end of rebirth, doesn't necessarily mean that there won't be more bodies, more incarnations. What it means, though, is consciousness no longer identifies with the body. You see that consciousness, who you really are, isn't coming and going in and out of bodies, but worlds and bodies are appearing to it and disappearing out of it, like a dream. In a dream, things are flying by, all sorts of things of this body, then that body. You could see it all very quickly within a very short period of time. But then it's like, oh, that's right. None of that was me actually getting into a body. All of it was a subjective experience. So what we call reincarnation, even though the word we use, incarnate, implies something going into a body. The non-dual view is exactly the opposite. There is consciousness and bodies appearing to it and disappearing out of it. Again, the idea that there's a body and I'm going into it is that material model. It's that model that something exists objectively, separate from my perception of it. If it doesn't, then all of it is simply what I happen to be perceiving in this moment. Perceptions coming and going, coming and going, coming and going. And like a dream at night, right, my entire life is nothing but that dream. And what I call my death is simply this dream ends and another one starts. And if you are aware that you are not even the dreamer, that you are consciousness aware of all of it, you will no longer have the sense of being confined in a body. You'll probably experience a lifetime of being an awakened being, a sage. Beyond that, I can't even speak about it. It's completely beyond what the mind can grasp. Does that help as a satsang on reincarnation? That's kind of it in a nutshell, and I've never really explained it differently or in that way before, or that succinctly, actually. So if that answers you, Julius, please let me know. If there's more you want me to go into, I'm really happy to. It's a marvelous place where we can quite literally see that something has to be a constant between all the lifetimes. And so the constant is far more important and far more interesting than the lifetimes themselves. Whether I was a female witch in the Middle Ages at one time, or I was a pharaoh, or I was, a blue guy on another planet, isn't nearly as significant. The costume I happen to be wearing is not nearly as significant as the one who's wearing the costume. And the consistent mistake made throughout all of those lifetimes, and that is identification with the body. No identification with the body. The bodies can come and go, but they no longer have any impact on you because you know who you are. It's just, gosh, I hope that's helpful. I hope it's helpful to all of you. Chris Skills. Hello, Chris. What happens to our awareness when we find ourselves doing something bad? where was the awareness to stop us doing so? In Vedanta, they say the part of the mind wasn't working. Do you agree? Not really. That part of the mind is not working. The behaviors, unconscious behaviors, where we suddenly realize that, oh, I'm doing something bad, only operate in the dark. They operate robotically. They're just reactive patterns, and we all have them, and we all live with them. Awakening, by definition, is awakening to the fact that you are not those conditioned patterns. Now, you wouldn't be sitting here listening to me if you hadn't had an inkling of that, maybe even a deep experience of it. You simply wouldn't be interested in this if there was nothing there to resonate with the idea of a consciousness-only perspective of life. But that realization, the budding, germinating realization of being consciousness, is going to bring to light unconsciousness. Conscious awareness is going to become increasingly aware of the robotic tendencies, of the unconscious patterns, of the conditioned responses. Now remember, consciousness at one time, you were completely identified with the conditioning as yourself. So, the robotic reactions, the conditioned patterns, the programmed responses were not seen as robotic reactions or conditioned responses. They were seen as myself. The awakening is when that begins to separate. Now, don't worry about the fact that there'll be times where it seems you're unconscious. It's only an invitation to go deeper into what consciousness is. Everything is appearing in the consciousness. The good behaviors, the bad behaviors, right? They're appearing. And of course, the good and bad behaviors are also relative, right? What's good behavior for somebody else is bad behavior for another, right? And vice versa. What's totally enjoyable for one is totally painful for another, and vice versa. So there's nothing constant there, right? So you're beginning to grasp. What you're really beginning to see are the fluctuations of the mind. And this is part of the awakening. You have to come to see how the mind actually functions, how the ego functions, how the conditioned responses identified with is the only thing there is to the ego. The ego isn't a thing. It is simply consciousness identified with conditioning. The conditioning is simply robotic. So your awareness of it, we don't need to try to explain it in Vedantic terms or in any kind of terms whatsoever. Because the only thing I'm concerned about is the fact that you're aware of it. Ah, look, I was doing this, and I wasn't even aware that I was doing it. Ah, but I am now. That's self-awareness. That's consciousness becoming aware of itself as consciousness. It's always there, right? Consciousness is always there. Even in the state of ignorance, consciousness is there, right? But what's happening is the realization of truth. Consciousness awakening to its own nature. And as it does that, the Vedantic begins to take place, which is vichara, discrimination. Oh my God, that's not me. And the only thing that makes it bad or good is not the what it actually is, because that's variable. It's cultural, it's personal. There's a whole bunch of stuff that makes that very relative. What makes something bad or good is simply the level of consciousness that is involved in it. And we can be grateful as consciousness arises. When consciousness arises, we clearly see the behaviors that are dysfunctional. I go, oh, thank God, I don't have to do that anymore. That's awareness. That's awakening, right? So don't worry about the fact that it may seem to come and go for a bit. It will come and go for a bit. Every time you go, oh my God, look what just happened, you've awakened a little bit more. And the more that happens, the more often it's going to happen. And the longer it's going to be, until finally you're simply not fooled anymore. Right? Yes, and that can happen in an instant. An awakening can happen, boom, like that. But I've never ever seen an awakening, well, I've heard of Ramana Maharshi, Steve Jourdain, a couple of characters in history. But for the most part, after the awakening, there's a period of, you might call, integration, a period of which that the awakening colonizes the rest of the system, and you are purged of all of the conditioned responses. You're not necessarily purged of the responses themselves, you are purged of identification with them. And of course, what sustains the conditioned responses is the identification with them. When there's no longer an egoic self that says, I am this is what I'm like, the those qualities have nothing to hold on to, and so they dissolve. And what happens is a completely different set of behaviors begin to emerge. Those are what we know as the perfume of awakening. Compassion, wisdom, patience, equanimity, gentleness, creativity, humor, playfulness, fun. All of those things begin to emerge because that's your nature. Right? That is the fruit of realization. It's not the realization. It's the fruit of it, just like the fruit of identification is suffering, misery, self-doubt, lack, fear. That is the fruit of identification with conditioning. Anything more I want to say on that? So, when I read this over, what happens to our awareness when we find ourselves doing something bad? Nothing happens to the awareness, right? Awareness is what you are. You are simply becoming aware of being awareness, right? And the more that happens, the less appealing behaviors that you used to just do unaware is. Believe me, at some point you'll even see that even all of that was just a dream. None of it actually touched you. That you have always been that original, pure, pristine, innocent self, completely untouched by the conditioning, and the one who even appears to have identified with the conditioning is itself just an image appearing, and you have always been the perfect, fully aware and awake self. Thank you for that, Chris. Oops, David and Aline, did you say something? But greetings. It seems like you started mid-thought here, but anyway, David and Aline. It's nice having couples here. This is great. Beyond thought, in the form of ideas, beliefs, and concepts, what can be known of what happens after the death of the physical body, especially as we don't share its limits or destiny? Well, what can be known of what happens after the death of the physical? Well, you cannot know what happens after the death of the physical body conceptually, because the concepts are all based on the relative world in which you're living, right? All ideas are simply combinations and interpretations and associations of specific objects, all of which can only be defined in terms of something else. Right? So nothing we experience has inherent existence. So you can't possibly say that that you can't know what's going to happen after death conceptually. So if you're going to understand the perpetuity of consciousness after death, or any events that happen after death, you're going to have to know the nature of consciousness itself. Now, for me personally, What happened before birth, what happened after death is not all that important. Sometimes things come up, it's useful, but it's not really important because I'm not interested in whatever the next event is going to be. Just like, I'm not planning a year in advance of, what I'm going to eat, right? They're insignificant events. It's going to happen. Whatever happens is going to happen. So I'm only interested in who is it happening to, because that doesn't change. So when I talk about what happens after death, and I did a video on that, I got a lot of views on it. I got a lot of comments, a lot of comments that said, "Hey, how can you possibly know what that is?" Some were even kind of nasty. you know, you're making it when you get trolls, right? Um, so, and you're absolutely right. Conceptually, from the point of view of the mind, you cannot know. It is completely unknowable. But from the point of view of the mind, you can't know what you are. The mind can't fathom consciousness. The mind has to reduce consciousness to the brain, a functioning of matter. That's what it has to do. It has to objectify it in some way. Yet my experience is not of being a brain. My experience is of consciousness. I see the brain as an image in consciousness. It's a concept in consciousness. It's something being examined objectively. What is looking at it? And so what has arisen in me as an understanding of reincarnation and what happens before birth and after death did not arise out of the mind. It arose out of the nature of consciousness itself. And so I saw that all experience was nothing but the arising and subsiding of energy or vibrations within consciousness, and that consciousness was the constant, which means that after death something else will arise. There'll be maybe an empty period. Who cares, right? All I know is that experience is constantly coming and going because it is in the nature of consciousness itself. Consciousness is not static. It is both complete emptiness and the dynamism of a universe of infinite number of objects simultaneously. Again, that cannot be conceived of by the mind. The mind could say, or it's empty, and it imagines emptiness, or it's full, and it imagines all this stuff. It cannot get to the transcendent place, which is both and neither. Neither this nor that, nor both nor neither. It is beyond the four possibilities. But you can, because you are that, and you don't need the mind to discern that. So, I do know this. I know it for an absolute fact that I remain. That I was here before I was born, and I'm going to be here after I die. But that I'm referring to is not this body, it's not this personality, it's not these memories, it's not these experiences, it's not these attributes. That's not the I. That is just simply the content that has no self. It has no owner. It has no person. The I is always the consciousness that is aware of it. And that you can tell from your own direct experience throughout your entire life has never, ever altered. It has never, ever fluctuated. Look for that yourself. Look at it. Become convinced. My God, it has never moved. Why in the world would simply the dissolution of a body, which isn't me in the first place, have any effect on the consciousness? And then you will, in your heart, know, I am forever. The I am has no opposite. That which is cannot become that which is not. The isness remains. It simply is. Timeless, birthless, and deathless. Does that help you, my friend? My friends, David and Aline. Yeah. Am I saying that right? Elaine or Eileen? Johanna says, what is the spiritual view of daydreaming? I can't seem to stop. Can I be aware of daydreams? Of course. You're aware of the daydream, aren't you? Okay. Is the daydreaming a problem? Is it getting in the way? Is it an avoidance of the things you have to do in life, or is it simply a creative expression? I daydream. I mean, everything I do involves creativity, right? The what I write, the courses that I create, the graphics that I do, the music, everything revolves creativity. I mean, I grew up in a household where creativity was not valued. Right? We work hard. Life is difficult. Never, ever uh, were those kind of things encouraged. I was a hopeless daydreamer. I was hopelessly just lost. I remember once, I was probably 17 years old. I go out, open the garage door, get in the car, because I had my parents' car, and proceeded to back out right into the car, my brother's car, which was right behind it. Completely oblivious. It's there. I mean, I saw it, right? Get in the car. Completely oblivious. Now, I had to learn to become more attentive so I wasn't bumping into things. But unless daydreaming has become a problem for you, it can be just a natural expression of creativity. It can actually be, for some people, it's the only way in which they have any opportunity for creative expression. Maybe you're in a job that doesn't want you to have it. Maybe you're just doing customer service, reading a script off of a screen. You have to give life to that creativity, so you'll daydream. So don't make a big deal out of it. It's not really important. And your observation is absolutely correct. You're observing it. You're aware of it. The awareness is always there. The whole point of satsang is to continually point you back to the awareness that's there, aware of everything, because that's what you are, right? It's not about what you are aware of. All of that's actually recognizing who you are. All of that becomes innocent. It becomes natural, right? And as you recognize who you are and the innocence of everything that is being made manifest, it harmonizes it. Because the conflict with it is disappearing. The inner conflict is disappearing. The self-acceptance is emerging, which means everything is going to harmonize. Everything is going to come into balance, because it's only our identification with the egoic mind that puts things out of balance. Not really. It can't really put things out of balance because it doesn't have any control over the universe. It just, by picking and choosing, by making this right and this wrong, I want this and I don't want that, with its attachments and its aversions, creates an artificial state of discord and disharmony where there isn't actually one. And it is simply by a rejection of those qualities that arise within us that are completely and perfectly natural. So simply be aware that you're aware of daydreaming. Take off of it any kind of pejorative, any kind of judgment. Just let it be there and watch how the system balances itself. The thing we all suffer from is a simple denial of our own nature. Your ultimate nature is consciousness. But consciousness is not something that is static and just flat and sitting in the background. It is also in the foreground. The real unity of life is that there isn't consciousness and what it's aware of. Consciousness and what it's aware of are actually one. Don't try to jump right into that with the intellect. You'll get lost in it. The way to approach that is by a total acceptance and allowing of what is happening right now with no argument with it. That's what Eckhart Tolle was referring to in The Power of Now, right? Simply, this moment is okay just the way it is. Any resistance or argument with this moment is the egoic mind, so don't give it any credence. It's only the ego that would say, I like this, I don't like this, gotta have this, push that away. Can you see the conflict that's creating? Especially if life is bestowing all of these things on you. And you're, no, you're creating a conflict where one doesn't really exist. Right? That's the big illusion. That's the fundamental ignorance. So daydream on, right? Just love yourself. Love everything about you. It will harmonize by itself. If it actually is getting in the way, it'll harmonize. You don't have to worry about it. Tabby, 1975. Why egoic self has been created? Does the egoic self have a link with truth? Are we a medium through which truth manifests? Why conditioning appears automatic and path of truth is painful? The ego has never been created. It is not a thing. It is an idea. It has no more reality to it than Mickey Mouse does. But Mickey Mouse, we can all talk about it as if it were a thing. The history and all the things he does in the cute, We talk about Luke Skywalker, right? And, the Star Wars universe and all the characters, and we can really totally get into it, and yet none of them actually exist. Right? The thing that makes the ego virulent is the believing in it. But it's more close to home than just that. We believe that what is appearing in our lives, the natural conditioning of the nervous system, right? We believe that that's who we are. When I believe that, I am this body, I am my conditioning, my mind forms a picture of what that me is. That picture is the ego, and it has no more reality than Mickey Mouse or Luke Skywalker. It is simply an image in the mind. But we're so convinced that it's who we are, that I am this body, that it seems to be alive. It's why the ego? Why is the spiritual path painful? It's not. It's not at all. But the identification with the body, that is the ego, runs deep. It is a habit. Now, there's nothing wrong with conditioning, right? The fact that I can speak to you right now spontaneously, thoughts are just coming and coming out of my mouth, and they're coming out of my mouth at the same time they're appearing to me, can only happen because of conditioning. Right? This body has been conditioned to respond immediately with the thoughts that are appearing, with lip, tongue, and breath movement, in particular sounds put together to communicate words that you understand. All conditioning. Useful, right? I learned how to play drums. I learned how to play piano. You learned how to walk. You learned how to dance. You learned how to scratch your nose. Ever look at a little kid just trying to feed themselves? We have to become the body, got to do this, becomes regular. It's how we learn how to play an instrument. Conditioning. So there's nothing wrong with conditioning. The conditioning of the nervous system is the natural way in which it adapts to the environment. The natural skills that come with the human body, namely speaking, thinking, the various kinds of stuff that we have to do, feeding ourselves, washing ourselves, dressing, all of that kind of stuff, all the skills that we learned, right? Adaptive. They're the natural things that we do. They adapted and appeared in a certain form, right? A child has infinite potential. Take any child and put them in any environment, and they will adapt to that environment. All these very same skills the very same abilities will condition themselves to fit within the environment, to stay safe. So in addition to the positive stuff, we also acquired what we now regard as negative conditioning. It wasn't negative at the time, it was simply adaptive. Right? Okay, I had to be a certain way in order to get what I needed from my tribe, from my parents. right? Certain things my parents liked, certain things they didn't. I adapted to that. Now, that adaptation may have actually severely limited me. In fact, it does limit you, right? And you know, if it's an abusive environment, it limits you quite a bit, right? It makes you very afraid of things. It makes a very, very small little window in which you're living. But it's totally adaptive. It's innocent. It's pure. It's natural. You're not broken. It's functioning perfectly. This is what it's supposed to do. When we, as we get older, and more of our capacities come online, a very powerful and important capacity comes online, and that is the forming of a sense of identity. Now, you have to form a sense of identity. If you don't form a sense of identity, you're what's known as schizophrenic. You become dysfunctional. You're in section A, right? Because you cannot deal. You cannot deal with the world except through a sense and through an identity. That's why we have it. That's why the body created. That's why the nervous system creates the sense of identity. Now, all of this is happening in front of the background of consciousness. Consciousness is never contained or restricted by the conditioning. Like I said, you can take a child and put it in any environment, and it will adapt itself to that environment. I'm watching my granddaughter right now. Her mother is Chinese. She's from Hong Kong. Her native language is Cantonese. She also speaks English. My son, of course, is from America, and he speaks English. So they have consciously made the choice. She always speaks to Audrey in Cantonese, and he always speaks in English. And she's, boom, perfectly. Both. I'll hear a conversation, and her and mom going off, her and her father. It's limited. She's only 2. I mean, it's not really, she's not limited, but it's clearly happening. Every now and then she'll say something to me, right? Baba, oh. Then oh no. Then she speaks to me in English. Now, she's not consciously doing any of it. It's just happening, right? This is the adaptation in the moment. That same child in another environment could be speaking Spanish, right? And never know anything. So it is the nature of the nervous system to identify, to adapt. That adaptation is the sense of identity, because it is a definition of who you are, what's allowed within the system in which you're living. But obviously, it's not all there is to you. You could be in any environment, and you would adapt to that. The problem is that because it's such a powerful drive towards safety, that sense of identity rarely gets questioned. We think, well, that's just what I am. We rarely go, well, wait a minute. I only think that's what I am because this is the way the system has been conditioned. Now, the very fact that you can entertain the thought that, wait a minute, I'm more than my conditioning, is an indication that consciousness is coming out of its identification with the conditioning. But that conditioning is still there. It's still being reinforced. It's still being, it still has behind it the weight of needing to survive. It still has behind it the fear that, stepping outside is dangerous, because at one time it was. And this is all the stuff that we feel. That sense of identification happening quite naturally, quite innocently, is the egoic mind. Remember, the ego there's nothing special about it. Right? I might have mentioned this before, that the word ego it came into the popular lexicon because of Sigmund Freud, the books of Sigmund Freud that started to be published and translated into English. In the original German, Sigmund simply uses the word ich, which is the German word for I. So everywhere he's just saying the I, the sense of self, the I. For some reason, the translator, the one who translated these into English, decided to use the word ego instead of the English word I. I have no idea why. Probably being, a bit erudite or something, right? Because ego is simply the Latin word for I. There's nothing special about it, right? It's simply the sense of I. Now, take all the thoughts we have about what the ego is and what it does, and just think all you are dealing with is the sense of I. When I say I, what do I mean? When I say I am this or that, what do I mean? That's all there is to it. Now, when we're young, we don't have that discriminating power yet. So we just say, I am a boy. I am a girl. I am smart. I am not so smart. I am this. I am that. And these are all just formations of thought. A different environment, a very different formation of thought could have taken place. When we realize that, it was simply conditioning that kind of solidified a particular pattern into place, which we then identified with. We realized that the identification is not who you are. That this conditioned pattern isn't me. I could be a million different things. As a matter of fact, I have infinite potential. And now the journey starts in a different direction. Oh, the real need here is to not improve myself or fix myself in any way. It's to simply liberate the sense of I from the conditioned patterns. And when you do that, you begin to see that the real nature of the I is consciousness. Boundless, unlimited, birthless, deathless, timeless, and adaptive. Take any form. Like water takes the shape of any container you pour it into, consciousness poured into any environment will simply adapt itself to that environment. The only mistake we make, the only one, is to think that we are this. I'm in this jar, I must be the jar. No, you're not, you're the water. Open the jar, pour you out. You can just evaporate into and become one with the sky. Is this clear about the whole ego and the like? So it is only because of our ignorance, we don't understand this, that the spiritual path seems painful. It isn't. Right? The only pain is the habit, the powerful habit of identification with conditioning and thinking that's who we are. And for some, it's very difficult. This was not an easy thing for me, simply because my own childhood was so horrific that there was an enormous amount of fear every time I want to try to go beyond some kind of boundary. But there was also this radical, rebellious spirit as well, which was help and also caused me some problems. But don't worry, if it feels painful, just step back. It isn't painful. It's only what the mind is calling it. And the only reason the mind calls that is because the mind is committed to remain in the pattern. That's all. The nature of the nervous system, once it establishes a pattern, it wants to maintain it. Stability is very important. And you, as awakening to who you really are becoming a bit of a pest, inviting the conditioning to shift. And so there's going to be a sense of resistance to it. And then the mind's going to say, well, the spiritual path is painful. No, it's not. What's painful is being constricted, imprisoned in a container, and believing that there's no way out of this, that this container is who you are. That's painful. Just to realize that you're not the container and that you have the infinite potential to be anything, right? Yes, it will make the container feel even smaller, right? But your efforts now will be directed at not trying to fix yourself inside the container, but removing yourself from the container. And that's a very different approach to life. That's the approach of spiritual inquiry. That's what we're doing here, folks. Hope you're liking it. By the way, if you are, like and share. I do see some thumbs up here, but okay, there's 69 of you watching now. Only 17 thumbs up. Come on, give me some more thumbs up here. That's me being aggressive. Okay. Love your satsang, Isabella says. Oh, hello, Isabella. Greetings from Oslo. Chris tells, do you believe God makes us a separate self for us to realize who we truly are? and what we're not? No, I don't. Um, God is another word for consciousness. The I am. I mean, God as an object is useless. What is God? God is the sense I. It is the I am. I mean, that was one of the greatest revelations in the Old Testament. I am that I am. What he means is, I am that I am. It was a realization of Moses that God was the sense I am. I am that I am. God announcing, who am I? I am that I am. That one, the one you're experiencing every single day, that's me. That's the true me. That's the true being. That's God. The apparent fall from grace, the apparent identification, is all happening on the screen of the I am. If I can go all the way down the rabbit hole, I will tell you. There's been no fall. There's been no dream. There is no dreamer. Nobody's ever not been this. Nobody's ever not known that they are this. The dreamer and the dream are one. It is all happening on the other side of the lens. And you will see eventually that even the sense of awakening is part of the dream. Is that... That's a big one. That's a big one to absorb. Nobody created this. Even if you look at it just humanly in the experience you're having, nobody created it. It is simply the way it happened. So there's no real intention behind it. There's no real purpose. So don't look for that. Just immerse yourself in the experience. Immerse yourself in what you are seeing. Immerse yourself in the wisdom that is awakening and bringing you to a deeper understanding of what's actually happening. And notice that all of that awakening is actually dissolving the sense of self. Right now, it feels like there's a self, a sense of self, that is awakening. Oh, I'm experiencing an awakening. I'm experiencing a sense of enlightenment. I'm experiencing increased wisdom. That too is being perceived. That one who is experiencing is also being experienced by the ultimate you, which has never fallen, which has never not been aware, which has never not thought of itself, has never been identified, has never been conditioned. It is the original innocence, the original self, the ultimate, the God, the I am, which is never identified with anything ever. Even the sense of identification, the one who falls asleep and then wakes up, is all happening on the lens of perception, on the screen of perception, and is not the ultimate reality. That's the deepest understanding, that not even the one who is awakening is actually real. That too is simply the experience appearing in front of that which has never been asleep. I hope that helps, Mr. Skills. Alan Eggleton. Hello, Alan. Oh, great. More likes. Thank you all for responding. I love your satsangs. I've started a vow of silence, although I still greet people and speak when I have to, but keeping it to a minimum. This keeps my mind quiet. Do you think this is good? Yeah. But remember, the mission here is to not keep your mind quiet. Because the moment you start speaking, your mind starts getting loud again. The reason for the only reason to do silence is to watch. When you say, I'm going to be silent, and I did a 10-day silent retreat. I mean, totally silent, no writing, not even eye contact, right? Completely withdrawn, only you. In that silence, the point is not to quiet the mind. The point is to watch the mind from the place of silence. Remember, silence and awareness they're two names for the same thing, the same reality. Reality is another name for it as well, because it doesn't have a word. It's indescribable. But the silence, being aware of the silence, and notice there's something even aware of the silence. I mean, it's incredibly subtle. So don't turn silence into a technique to get a result. Always make everything you do, whether it be a meditation, whether it be something active, an inquiry, a vow of silence, an extended period, whatever it might be, yoga, exercise, whatever it might be, use it as an opportunity to watch, not to acquire anything. Anything that can be acquired can be lost. And any attempt to acquire is always coming from a sense of being a separate self that needs something. Let all of your actions arise out of the place that needs nothing, that is already perfect, that is already complete. When you are sitting in silence and watching thought, you are looking from the place that is unmovable. That's who you really are. Make that be the focus of attention, not quieting the mind. To quote Muji, trying to quiet the mind is like trying to stop the wind dressed as a kite. You can't do it, and you don't need to. The mind will get active and inactive, active and inactive. When you are no longer moved by it, when its antics are no longer important, it does get quiet. But it's not a conscious attempt to make that state happen. You need no state in order to be who you are. The realization of that completely frees you from any kind of objective for meditation, for spiritual, for any of it. Right? So let that vow of silence be a vow of introspection. Use the fact that you're not giving a lot of external energy out, that you're not, that your attention isn't going so outward. By concentrating on being silent, you are bringing your attention back. You're minimizing unnecessary conversation, which of course will slow the mind down. That's not the point. Use it as an opportunity to look at yourself, to watch, to become more and more in touch with the place that is silent, that doesn't have to be made silent, but actually is. Get in touch with the silence itself, which is your true nature. Then it'll have a completely different complexion on it. Boy, lots of questions. Starlight Glimmer says, thank you. How do we handle people who are destroying the world with their greed? I always find myself judging people like that, which only boosts my ego and perpetuates separation. Yep, you're absolutely right. If we're one with everyone, can we influence others by looking within? Sorry, I hit send by mistake. It's okay. Again, don't turn the oneness with others into a philosophy or some kind of thing that you have to do. It's simply a recognition. If we look at the world and greed that is destroying the planet, I'll be the first. I will be the first to say it. The world is run by lunatics, heavily armed lunatics, heavily greedy lunatics. And greed is one of the deadly sins, and the reason it's a deadly sin is because it kills itself. It destroys its own environment. It destroys it soils its own bed. So I am all for political activism. I'm all for doing things involved. I've done marches. I've protested wars, and I very well may again. But I also know that merely doing that without a deeper perspective behind it only increases the conflict. It makes both sides dig in more deeply, which is exactly what's happening. The land grab by the elite, by the power elite, is at an unprecedented level. So what's the perspective that I need to bring to this? Well, for me, and actually pointing back to your idea of the oneness, I cannot separate myself from the others. So others' suffering is my suffering. Others' greed is my greed. I have to, and greed is suffering. Right? The first thing we have to, don't judge these people simply because, and the way you overcome the judgment, which means you get to the state of forgiveness, the way you get there is to see that you are dealing with a robot. You are dealing with unchallenged, conditioned patterns. Now, their conditioned patterns developed in such a way that they became very successful. They got the rewards that the world offered, and they wanted more of that, and more of that, and more of that. And they developed this idea that somehow they were morally superior. They were better. That they were like almost like an aristocracy. Like aristocracy thinks we're simply better. It's conditioning. It is more conditioning. It is just as delusional as somebody thinking I'm not enough, right? So at the heart of it is the same ignorance. When you see that, you can be like Christ and say, Father, forgive them. Find them innocent. They don't know what they're doing. And he even allowed himself to be killed. He didn't defend himself. He didn't protest. He didn't say, this is unfair. He reached into a place more deep, so filled with love that he couldn't even impute guilt to those that were tormenting him and eventually killed him. He couldn't do it. He could not separate himself from them. He took complete and total responsibility for all of consciousness. And that's really what I recommend to people. Pray for the world. What does it mean to pray for the world? Don't see the world as something out there with a bunch of bad people in it that you have to deal something with. See it as consciousness. And the current state of consciousness is one of enormous turmoil, enormous conflict, one that is pushing it to the brink. But the pushing of it to the brink can only bring about realization. Because you cannot kill consciousness. You cannot destroy it. You can only destroy what is not true. And so what we're seeing, amplified, magnified throughout the world, we are seeing things as this greed, this kind of stuff has been going on for a long time. Not forever, it has arisen with the growth of human consciousness and its capacity for introspection. The growth of human consciousness that allowed us to even have a sense of self, to have a sense of identity. Animals don't have that. We do. And that sense of identity maturing and going through this adolescent period of arrogance and egotism and really just so embracing the separate self that it becomes a competition and I'm winning, right? See the entire picture from beginning to end as an inevitable evolution of consciousness. So, within consciousness, where are you going to stand? You're going to stand in a position of judgment or of wisdom? You're going to stand in a position of criticism or condemnation, or you're going to stand in the position of compassionate awareness? Believe me, the people who are, the ones who are greedy are suffering just as much as others are. They've got all the stuff that's supposed to make them happy, and they're not. And this is not, this is not me, because I'm not one of those making judgments. This has been shown, study upon study, that the more wealthy people get, the more disconnected they get, the more removed they get, the more arrogant they become. This is what happens. There's a certain part of the primitiveness of the nervous system and the primitiveness of human consciousness at this stage that wants to define itself. I mean, look at it. It's the ego. I'm trying to define myself in terms of somebody else. I'm better than you are. That's ego. That's ego just on steroids. I mean, ego is the devil, right? And this level of the ego completely taking over the world is really what the book of Revelation in the Bible was this is symbolically representing. That the devil comes down to earth to make this his kingdom. He's trying to turn this into hell. But ultimately, he's cast out. And what we're seeing is the casting out. What we're talking about right now is the casting out. We're casting it out first within ourselves. We're recognizing that egoic tendency, right? And then in others, through the absence of judgment, through equanimity, through compassion. And believe me, you know, Christ was the most loving, compassionate person who ever walked the planet. But man, was he wise. You know, they brought him the woman, they wanted to stone her to death. And under the Jewish law, they had every right to do it. Well, he doesn't want that to happen. He's about forgiveness. But he couldn't just say, no, just forgive her, because they'd stone him too. He can't contradict the law. So very wisely, he said, yep, you're absolutely right. So tell you what, the one among you who is without sin, you cast the first stone. Now, no self-respecting person at that time could have cast that stone, because to do that would have for them to say, well, I'm without sin, so I have the right to do this. They couldn't. That's the kind of wisdom we need to draw on. But that's the kind of wisdom that is available to you the deeper you go in this inquiry that we're doing right here. So be willing to take it all in. Be willing to see what's going on. Be willing to support the things that you feel need supporting. Get out and march if you need to. But take responsibility for whatever comes into your consciousness as not being arbitrary. It's not out there anymore. It's here. And anything that comes into my consciousness, it is my responsibility and my right to deal with it, to turn it towards the light. And that's what we do. And believe me, even if you never say a word, that energy is there. Christ used the example of a woman that the kingdom of heaven was like a woman who hid yeast in 3 loaves of bread until the whole was leavened. You know, you put the yeast in the bread, you can't see it. Just this big ball of bread, but little by little, it begins to rise. He was referring to this. These insights we're having right here, right now, the sincerity and earnestness with which we approach it is going out into all consciousness. But believe me, it is being felt on every single level. And what we are experiencing is simply the mask being pulled off the deformity of the egoic mind. And it will eventually become so distasteful that it will be abandoned. Believe me, we're not going to wipe ourselves out. It ain't going to be pretty for a bit, but we're not going to wipe ourselves out. We are going to make it. Eileen. Walt says, yes, it helps. Thank you. There's a couple other ones I wanted to... Whew. Tabby says, I realize questions are different, but your answer remained the same. Yeah, I am a bit of a broken record, aren't I? I am a broken record. Buddha was actually said that once as well. I mean, why do you always say the same thing? He says, well, it doesn't matter how many different dreams there are. The solution to the dream is always the same. Wake up. Yeah. But you can see how beautifully The truth can mold itself to fit any question, to bring every question back to what the fundamental question is, which is, who are you? Who are you? Let that be more important to you than anything. To come to know directly, through experience, viscerally, in every cell in your body, who you are. Let that be the mission in your life. Elaine Fraser very long name. I realized that awareness is the formless essence which lights up every experience, but I still don't get it that I am that awareness. Okay, well then, I'm glad you're seeing that that everything is illumined by awareness, right? Nothing's happening outside of awareness. Outside of awareness is completely theoretical at best, right? And completely unreal in reality. It's okay. The sense of still being a separate personal self is still there. It's fine, not a problem. Don't see it as a conflict or as a problem you have to get rid of or something you have to overcome, because all that does is make, it just makes conflict, right? But that sense of being a separate self that says, still don't get it, is that not appearing in front of the very same awareness? Remember, it doesn't matter what appears in front of awareness. It doesn't matter if it's absolutely beautiful and perfection and enlightenment, or if it's total illusion and delusion. It's all happening in front of the same awareness. That's why Buddha and other sages have said there's no difference between the enlightened and the ignorant. Both are appearing on the screen of awareness. It's all you have to worry about. Just notice, okay, I still don't get it. Well, who's that I that doesn't get it? Who is that? I don't get it. What do I mean? When I say I don't get it, what am I referring to? Well, that I don't get it. Well, it's a thought. It's a thought referring to a sense of identity, a body, a mind. But here I am, and I am aware of that thought. Now, the awareness that is aware of the thought, I don't get it, does it not get it? Remember, you don't have to have a particular quality of thought, a particular character of thought. That'll happen on its own. You simply need to be aware of thought, and that all thoughts come and go. And the thought I is always referring to something out there. When the sense of I is referring to awareness, how can you not get it? So, don't make a big deal out of the thought arising, I don't get it. To whom does that thought appear? Awareness. Is that not all there, and is that not you? I mean, really. You are aware of that thought, right? It's not like awareness is this theoretical thing over there. There's me, and then there's awareness. Oh, there's this giant godlike awareness, right? And then there's me over here going, I don't get it. I don't get it. You're the one that's aware, right? So you are that awareness. Don't try to imagine what it is. Don't try to put a form on it. Don't try to put anything to it. As you said, you can see that it's not that it's everything is appearing in that light. Okay, well, is that anything other than you? Now just ponder that. Don't try to get it immediately. Don't try to intellectualize it. Just go, is that anything other than me? Okay, well, let me take a step back here. There's a thought. I don't get it. It's just a thought. It's not here all the time. A moment from now, I won't even be thinking about that. Matter of fact, there may be even some moments where I go, oh, God, I really get it. Right? And then we want to hold on to that. Right? Where the thought is, I get it. Oh, I'm awake. Or the thought is, oh, I don't get it. I'm asleep. They're both appearing to exactly the same thing. That's where you go. Remember, Don't try to create a certain set of thoughts. Enlightenment is not a particular quality of thought. It is that which is prior to thought. It is not even the absence of thought. It is simply that which is aware of thoughts. And so, being aware of thoughts, no thought is inherently true. So when it says, I don't get it, you're referring to a state of mind that is looking for something to get. And that is being witnessed by this place. That is being witnessed from awareness. What you are looking for is where you are looking from. But it is a mistake we all make, thinking that the awakening is some kind of great quality of thought, that everything is just beautiful and roses and stuff. It's not true. Rainbows and dolphins. It's not true. It is a complete and total awareness of whatever happens to be here, with no preference for this quality or that quality. Now, inevitably, with no preference, the higher quality begins to emerge because there's nothing to resist it. There's no ego to support it. But that's not what we're about. That's the wake of the boat. That's not where we're headed. We're only concerned with the nature of the one that is aware. And you find that the one that is aware and awareness are one and the same. Just look. Your mind's going to say, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? But is it not where you're looking from? Just look. Is awareness different from you? Is there you and awareness? If so, what are you? If awareness is something you're aware of, what's aware of it? Right? What's the distance between you and awareness? You have to just stay with this long enough. And believe me, the sense of there being a separation between you and that will dissolve. It has to, because it isn't real. It's just a habit of thought. A habit that you are aware of. Wonderful. Somebody with a wave. Hi, GP, a W. Consciousnessify. Hey, GP, what is your opinion on substances like DMT, LSD, all of the plant medicines? I've never tried it, but I think I'm ready to now, whereas before I was either too scared or had no interest in it. It's kind of a two-edged sword. The plant medicines have been around for thousands of years. They've been an integral part of human development and the development of consciousness. I mean, there's evidence in every religious tradition of the use of psychedelic compounds, of plant medicines, to bring about particular shifts and changes in consciousness. It's not the ultimate, which is why I always have to caution about it. Because the ultimate is seen that even a very beautifully altered state of consciousness, which gives one's profound insight, is still an experience. There is no such thing as any compound, be it synthetic, like MDMA or LSD, or some DMTs are synthesized. Then there's others that are natural that come from the frog, and then there's the plant medicines, mushrooms and peyote and San Pedro. There's a bunch of them out there. And I know personal friends of mine that are shamans, and that use that extensively. But ultimately, you have to see that none of those can really show you who you are, because who you are is that which is aware of them. Yes, they can have a profound effect by having such a giving you such a contrasting experience that it breaks down the walls of what is our normal idea of the way things are. And we see that it is just an idea of the way things are and not actually what they are. So from that point of view, if you journey with a skilled shaman, by somebody who is a skilled guide and doesn't get in the way of it and doesn't lay a bunch of nonsense on it and isn't about partying and all of that, the experience of having broken down those walls, where you can literally see the ego standing in front of you. My God, I'm not that. You can see the entire structure of thought that makes up the ego. Now, it never completely dissolves. After the journey, you'll watch the ego get put together. I always say, if somebody is interested in doing that, find a real shaman with real experience, right, to take you through it, and don't do it until you have established a regular meditation practice. Because the thing that I've experienced, and I know a lot of people out there do, it's having a resurgence. There's very little in the way of preparation or integration after the fact. How to you can have deeply profound experiences, but just like I have a lot of experiences of people, the questions I've gotten some today, it's like, how can I find this balance? It's like one side I'm seeing myself as pure consciousness, and then I've got this life that I have to deal with. That has to happen. That integration has to take place, even if there's a deeply profound experience. So, I never say no. As a matter of fact, there's many, there's evidence in every, as I said, in every major tradition, including Buddhism, the use of psychedelic compounds, going back to Soma in the Hindu tradition. They've played a role, but they've always played a role that was, it had a context within culture. The big problem I see with it today is that we don't have the same kind of context. We have a very intellectual context. We have a very different framework in the way we in the West live. So a degree of preparation is extremely necessary for that. So that would be my caution on it, and also to remember that while the experiences themselves can be profound, they're only a pointer, right? They're not the ultimate. And ultimately, you see, no matter what the experience is, whether it be, I see God. Well, who are you seeing God? Don't make that big a deal out of even if you see God or have a conversation with Jesus. Don't make that big a deal out of it, because it's all happening. It is all an experience coming and going. And the real awakening is the realization of who it is that's having the experience. So, that said, take it with a grain of salt, but make sure there's a proper preparation, and then there's proper integration after the fact, and it will be beneficial, but not the end game. I mean, I've known people that have they do it once a week for years, right? And I after a few, you can see some changes in their character, but then after that it flattens, because now it's about the experience. It's not about the deepening, and that's without that perspective, that the ultimate goal is to not have anything to do with it, to not need anything other than you, has to be borne in mind. And it's like I said, there's some Buddhist retreats now that are actually using ayahuasca within a context of a longer retreat, right? Meditation, for the express purpose of allowing the meditator to have a level of experience that a lot of people don't. They could spend decades meditating and never have that kind of insightful breakthrough. So that's a way in which it's being used in something that's very traditional, and something that is, one of the Buddhist precepts is no intoxicants. So to regard it as a medicine and not as an intoxicant is extremely powerful. In fact, there was an entire issue of, I think it was a Tricycle magazine, which is the leading Buddhist publication, which was all about the use of plant medicines in meditation and in Buddhist practice. And there was a whole bunch of people that were like all for it and its uses and why, and a whole bunch of people that were totally against it. It's an intoxicant, nothing. It's got to be pure meditation. As always, I take a middle road. Be smart, be conscientious. If people are dabbling, don't do it with them. Find people that are looking for this as a temporary means towards a deeper experience that will help open some doors for you. So I hope that's adequate advice on the subject. Shanika from England, hello. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, there are so many questions and it's already at 2 hours. Let me see. I'm going to take one more question. So give me a second while I pick one here. I'll pick out a couple of things, just comments. Thanks for the satsang. I've been resonating with your explanations recently and been listening to your videos. Great. Glad to hear that. Inner Aesthetics. That's a nice name. Okay, I'm going to try to sum of the... Jean-Claude Van Damme. Are you homosexual? Yeah, troll alert. Yeah. No, I'm not. And I really don't care whether you are or not, or if anybody is. Who cares? It's totally irrelevant. Dave and Aline say, thanks for your very clear answer to the question on the death of the physical body. You're pronouncing Elaine just fine. But Elaine, like Elaine, but with an A, Elaine. Very good. Enjoying the satsang. Thank you so much for a great explanation about the ego. Every awakening experiencing is like taking off a tight shoe. Yes. Kobe, is this Jordan Peterson's dad? I'm not that old. Thank you. From Tabby, lightly. Somebody saying there's a slight hint of disappointment. Somebody else about chest pains. All right. I'm going to just talk a second and try to answer a lot of the things that come up for everybody. It is the thing that creates suffering and makes us feel as if we're asleep when in fact we're awake. Is the relationship we create with what we experience. If there's no relationship with your experience, it's just experience. It has no meaning, it has no influence, it has no power, it has no authority. It cannot create suffering. We have to give it meaning, right? So maybe you're having a physical thing like chest pain, right? You said, I think this is caused by the fact that I don't know, I feel kind of lost. I don't know, have a direction right now in life. What I always recommend, and this is the heart and soul of inner reconciliation, my process for alleviating suffering and preparing somebody for awakening, is that to not do not use the mind to make conclusions. I feel this, I must be experiencing that, because that's all the mind. If you're feeling a chest pain, right, it may or may not have at its root some kind of emotional disturbance because you're not quite sure what to do with your life. Right? What I would do is simply be with the chest pain. Now I have to say this because I'm not a doctor. If it's severe, make sure you get it checked out by somebody to make sure there's nothing physically wrong. But if there isn't, there's just this pain there. Be with the pain without thinking about it. Just feel it. Let your inquiry be an embrace of the feeling that you're having. right? And the same is true for the other one who was feeling. What were you feeling? I forgot. Um, Disappointment. That was it. There's a sense I have a feeling, I have a chest pain, I have a disappointment, or I feel lost, like I don't know I don't have any sense of direction, right? Those are all feelings, right? There's a feeling of fear that goes with that, the sense of being lost. Go to the feeling without the narrative. Act as if you don't know. You have no idea what it is. No idea whatsoever. So you're just going to be present with the feeling. I find that the more we do that the feelings resolve themselves. Sometimes they just disappear because all they needed was attention. Sometimes they reveal the story. They reveal the whole trauma, the whole energy around it, and anywhere in between. Right? But notice, I don't impose any interpretation on the actual sensation itself, the feeling that you're having. So if there's a sense of disappointment, just be with the disappointment. It really is that simple. When you're with a feeling, a sensation, or even a thought pattern, and you're not just going off on it, you're not reacting to it, you're not trying to push it away, you're not holding on to it, you're not trying to interpret it, you're just being present with it, you are standing as pure awareness, because that's the nature of awareness. It does not react. It has no preference for what it's experiencing. It is completely and totally present in the experience itself. And from that place of non-reactivity or equanimity, whatever needs to be resolved can be resolved because there's nothing holding it in place. If I say this pain is here, because I don't have a sense of direction, I've created an association that may not be true. Matter of fact, it probably isn't. Okay? And if there is a relation, if there is a connection between the two, let the feeling tell you that itself. Don't impose an answer on it. An imposed answer is always the mind trying to come up with an explanation that it likes. And it's always based on memory, and it's almost always wrong. If it's right, it's by accident. It's not, right? Just, yeah, I got one, yay. It's never accurate except by accident. So you just be with it. And notice what happens when you just, if you have that chest pain right now, be with it. Right this moment. No explanation, no interpretation, just be with it. Right? And stay with it. Notice that it's not static. It just doesn't sit there. That it actually kind of ebbs and flows. You'll also find it may start to move. Let it move. Right? It's some kind of energetic disruption. There's something going on. But you don't need to know what it is. The mind does not need to participate in healing. You follow? You do not need your mind to heal. You only need presence. And your presence is simply awareness without reaction. You'll notice the impulse to react. You'll notice the desire to react. But you don't. You're just with it. And the same thing is true as I have no direction. That's a thought. Right? So just be present with that. Is that I have no direction? Okay, who's aware of this thought, I have no direction? And you'll see that I have no direction. There's an entire picture of you there, right? And you're buying that picture as if it's actually you. Go, wow, is that really me? Or is this simply a thought pattern that I never really scrutinized before? Oh, it's a pattern of thought. Is it always there? No. Oh, sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. Maybe it's been there more often than not lately, but that doesn't make it any more true. Who am I then? Well, I'm the one that's aware of it. Have I lost my awareness? No. Does the awareness, has it lost its direction? Isn't it always just doing exactly the same thing, being aware? Yep. So is anything actually lost, or is this just an idea that I have fallen for? Just a thought pattern that I've just let go unquestioned. The same thing is true of a feeling of disappointment or disillusionment or discouragement. Anything, fear, right? Anything. If you are present with the actual feeling itself, be it a sensation or emotion, without creating a story about it, you are now perfect presence. And that is the healing atmosphere that makes stuff really happen. That is the real deal. That's where healing actually comes from. Right? So just presence, 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 presence. Then you are present, not as something, but simply you are presence. And isn't that really the nature of all of our experience? When we talk about awareness, we're just talking about being present. It's not an abstraction, it's me. Am I present? Yeah, I'm present. Who am I? Well, I'm this presence. All I know is I am. That's all I know. Everything else, thoughts. I am. Does that ever change? Nope. Does there seem to be any limits on it? Nope. This is direct inquiry. This is direct examination. This is not ideas about experience. It's a direct looking at experience. And in this place of presence, the entire range of human experience becomes open to you, becomes available to you. You don't restrict anything. And even the most our deep fears can come to the surface, and they'll be totally accepted. Pain, everything. So, on that note, I see people signing off for the night. Thank you all. Remington asks, can we do a meditation? Wednesday mornings on Facebook, I do my meditation. And please remember to like this and share it as you're saying goodnight. Catherine says, thanks GP, you were great tonight. Thank you, Catherine. Remington, thanks GP. Keep embodying the Tao. Thank you, I will. Thank you and good night until next time. David and Elaine. Good night, good night, good night. So again, if I didn't get to your question, I did get to your question. As you can tell, the earlier I ask your questions, the better I just get more than I can possibly fit into a 2-hour satsang. When I do some more of these lives, I may go longer, but and I'm trying to work that out so that we're actually live in a place, which I think would be really, really wonderful. So thank you all. Thank you for being here. Thank you for wanting to engage in a conversation of this magnitude. This is what the world needs, folks. And you are part of what is delivering to the world what it needs. So